Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Connor Moran. I'm the director of the Wisconsin Book Festival, and I want to welcome everyone here to our event with Jackie Polzin for her new novel, BROOD. It is a particularly special night for me tonight because Jackie was one of the first people I met when I moved to Madison in February of 2003, which feels a couple of lifetimes ago, I would say. But that is just the power of these types of connections and the power of the Wisconsin Book Festival. I've known since 2003 that we were going to be here tonight. Jackie told me very early on she was going to write a book, and here we are. So, Jackie, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It is also the first live event for Brood, so that is an additional, just the stakes get a little higher. I want to take a moment and just thank Madison Public Library and the Madison Public Library Foundation and all of our sponsors for ensuring that we can continue to do free cultural events throughout the pandemic. It has been very special to many people. I know actually I reconnected with Jackie because she was at our event, a couple of them last fall, and it is really, truly special to be able to do these. We're entering a year where we don't know. It might still be virtual all year. We might be back in person in October. We'll have to see, but I'm really grateful to all of you who are here with us tonight. Jackie, welcome and congratulations on this book. It's so, so lovely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love that you foresaw this.
I mean, I do really believe that you said, like, this is what I'm going to do. And I was like,
Yeah,
cool. The part I didn't see is that I'd get to have any role in it.
yeah. I mean, books were the thing that brought us together, really. I mean, we were working at the same place.
Yep.
I wanted to be a writer. I was writing,
Yep.
and you were reading voraciously.
Just reading. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of still true, actually. Speaking of reading, would you start us off with a little reading from the book?
Yes.
Wonderful.
I'm going to read for about, I think, 5 minutes or something, just to give you to establish your expectations. So in this portion of the book, the narrator has come to feel kind of suddenly that the chickens are fat. She looks at them and that's the realization, though she's actually been told that in the past. And she decides to go to drive to the chicken shop with organic food to get a little better food for the chickens. I did not drive 10 miles to the farm and fleet off Highway 62 for feed. Because our chickens are fat, I drove 20 miles in the opposite direction to buy organic feed from a small shop in St. Paul called the Egg and I. The man who owns the shop has fine features and slender hands. I hope this has something to do with his propensity for organic food. The man inquired about my chickens and their habits and my concerns about both. He was not surprised by anything I told him because, he said, today's chickens grow twice as big in half the time. Would you like the standard size pellets or the large ones, he asked. Does it matter? The large pellets make less dust and are easy to clean up. I'll take those. Your chickens might not eat them. Most chickens find the large pellets hard to swallow. I have no reason to believe our chickens have bigger mouths or larger gullets or are generally exceptional when compared with other chickens. The small ones then, I said. I recommend the small ones. A sign taped to a glass tank read free chick with purchase of feed. The fine fur of the chicks' feathered bodies moved as a single orange cloud beneath the heat of the red light. I did not want a free chick, nor could I afford one, though I would have liked to hold one, to cup the tiny charm of its heart against my thin sweater. A woman waited at the counter as her young son emptied his pockets of change. He wanted a chick, and the promotion made it possible to buy a small bag of feed instead. Children do not know that buying a chick is just the beginning. Parents, if this idea occurs to them at all, underestimate the extent of it, especially if they have never cared for animals themselves, or if they are living in debt. Even more so if they come from a long line of similar circumstances. Behind the counter, the owner parted his lips in preparation for accepting whatever short amount of change was spread before him. The boy made 4 pillars of the coins, And the mother saw here an opportunity for teaching or learning or distraction from the fact that she was about to become the owner of another life, however small. So she gave a brief lesson in quarters and dimes, all of which I did not mind. I even found a little happiness in the young boy's excitement. The mother was quite a good teacher. I felt that I also was learning something, though I could not have said what, as she shuffled coins on the counter like a bit of magic. The boy would surely leave with the chicken, and he seemed to understand this through his solemn nodding. The boy left with his chick, the runt of the litter, in a box lined with the particular bedding most suitable to chicks, along with the smallest sack of the smallest pellets, and a bottle of drops and a package of wipes for the chick's bottom, having chosen a chick with a pasty butt, though his mother had urged him otherwise. The boy paid $4.72 for the free chick and its trappings, and his mother paid $30 more. 3 drops a day in fresh water, the man reminded, laying a grave hand on the boy's shoulder as he escorted him to the door. I've never used drops in the water, I said to the man. Most people use vinegar. That's what I recommend. I've never put anything in the water. You must have hearty chickens. The man rang up 3 bags of standard size organic pellets for a total of $99 and change. I left the organic feed piled high in the trunk and went straight to the coop. In the kitchen, I scoured the jug inside and out. When I had finished my scrubbing, the sponge bore a brilliant streak of green. From beneath the sink, I took the gallon of white vinegar and doctored the water in the chicken's jug. All the while, the chickens went about their business. Darkness rummaged around in the low barbs of the youngest hostas. Gloria bathed in a patch of dirt she had cleared from under a ragged black mat of last year's leaves. The shaggy pile sat beside her, like a chicken of poor design. In the midst of their daily activity, the chickens did not look fat at all. The night freight rumbled past as I thought of the boy and his doomed chick. Would he feed her enough? Would he feed her too much? Would he feed her the gummy candy that looks like a worm and behaves more or less in the same manner? Would his mother know what to do? She would not. But would she learn? Would she check his work? Would she teach him with her enchanting gestures, or would she let him be? Would she tuck the chick into a black pocket of her mind where all things die? When I was young, I pretended to do everything I was told, but I did not do any of it. I did not brush my teeth. I wiped them with the sleeve of my shirt. I did not do my homework. I placed stickers in neat rows on the back side of my closet door. Would the boy read the label of the dropper-topped bottle? Could he read? Would he love her? Would he sleep alongside her in his stifling bed?
Thank you so much. I'm going to clap just because you can't hear the clapping that's going on across the country. But thank you for that. I feel like readings matter so much, and I'm honored to be the first public reading. But yeah, I feel like before I get to the questions, like this book is so very you. It is unique in its style and its approach, but it is also holistic and warm and thoughtful and so many things that I'm like, of course this is Jackie's book. And so I hope that you know that came through for many of us.
Thank you for saying that, Connor.
Yeah, of course. All right, I'm going to go to questions. I'm also going to say to everyone watching, wherever it is that you're watching, I want to hear your questions. I've come up with stuff, but it's not just my event, it's all of our events. So please use the Ask a Question button right down there at the bottom of the screen. Ask the questions, and I will pass them along to Jackie. In fact, the first thing that I'm going to ask before I even get to anything that I came up with, Lee in the chat before the event said, "What is Jackie's signature bake?" Because many people were talking about what a great baker you are, which is true, and definitely slightly off topic. But I told Lee that I would ask that. So, what is your signature bake?
Let's see. You know, I used to bake so many cookies, and I had this kind of question I would ask people, like, would you rather eat your favorite 10 cookies for the rest of your life, like any of your favorite 10,
Yeah.
or just be able to try every cookie in the world once. So I guess it's probably cookies, but I haven't really answered my own question. It's a
That's all
lot.
right. Which would you do? Would you eat 10 cookies or all the cookies?
I mean, I probably have 10 really good
Yeah.
cookie
Yeah.
recipes.
Yeah. I think
It's
I'd go with 10.
yeah.
Yeah. That feels right. I mean, like trying all the cookies feels like I'm gonna have a lot of bad cookies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
A lot of disappointment.
Yeah,
Would
a
you choose
lot.
a lot of disappointment or essentially no disappointment?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. The only thing that to worry about is, getting sick of your favorite cookies. But how could that ever happen? All right. So to the questions. The first question I have, and I think it's the most obvious one, and you're gonna get asked all the time now, is, do you have chickens?
I do not have chickens now,
Okay.
but my partner and I had chickens for probably 6 years, about six
Okay.
years.
And
Yeah.
did the chickens all go to a farm all together and just live out the rest of their days? Is that how that works out?
When I applied to grad school, we probably could have moved with the chickens. It turns out that the city of Boise, Idaho, has among the loosest chicken policy of any city I've encountered. But we didn't know that. We could have just driven in with our chickens and no one would have questioned us.
Yeah.
I think at that point we had 3 or 4 chickens left,
Okay.
and we convinced my mom to build a coop in the backyard and take them.
All right. Good job. Well done.
Yeah, so one of them is still alive. One of those chickens is still alive.
Amazing. And what is that chicken name?
Darkness.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
What a great say. It's like the segues build themselves, because the chickens in this book have excellent names and they have really great personalities as well. And so I'm reminded of the time when the narrator says that she doesn't really think of the chickens as birds. And that, I think that comes through. They're kind of something unto themselves. So where did the names and the personalities come from?
The personalities, okay, let's start with the names. Over the course of our chicken owning, we probably had 10 different chickens.
Okay.
So a few of them are favorite names from those chickens. Gam Gam is a made-up name that seemed appropriate.
Yeah. That's good.
And the spirit of Gam Gam is a chicken we owned named Pecky.
Okay.
And let's see.
Was
The
Pecky
other
your favorite?
I mean, Pecky was not my favorite. Our favorite was a chicken named Lil Sue, because both my partner and I have mothers named Sue.
Cool.
And she was small and very, I guess, as friendly as a chicken can be.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So that was kind of another chicken that's inspired by one we had was Miss Hennepin County is named after a chicken. I mean, I saved that name, but was thinking of another large red chicken we had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's the boss? Because Miss Hennepin County is the boss.
Yeah, she is.
Right. And then there's Gloria.
Yeah, Gloria. And Gloria was named after a chicken named Silver Gloria that was named by our neighbor. So
Awesome. I feel like you did a great job in the diversifying the names from the Mrs. Featherbottom or something like that, the like kind of like elaborate long name, and then the Gam Gam, which is like the sweet name, and then of course you have a person's name, and then just something like Darkness feels like probably there's no other name for Darkness, right? Does that track?
I think so. I mean, I think, yeah, they all kind of were. I mean, yes, I think the names, especially Gloria and Darkness, felt like the most, they allowed me to characterize those chickens a little bit more, but the other names felt appropriate given what I felt I knew about the chickens. So
there you go. Great. We'll definitely come back to the chickens. I have a couple more questions about chickens, but as long as we're on the topic of names, how did you decide not to name this narrator or have this narrator name herself to anyone? And what did that do for you in your storytelling?
I think it did serve an important function for me as I wrote the book. I think if I had to kind of say what the book is exploring, it's grief and that the kind of isolation associated with that, especially in an instance of miscarriage yielding grief brought on by infertility that feels a little bit like you've been thrust outside of the
Yeah.
world function. I mean, I think having children can feel like an assumption until that moment comes when it doesn't happen.
Yeah. And yeah,
And
when something else tells you, no, not now.
yeah, and I think the effect of that was feeling cut off for me personally, having experience was feeling cut off from the world. And for this narrator, it helped me to um keep the world at bay a little bit without
Yeah.
that formal acknowledgement of the name, and also kept distance wise like a very close perspective from the narrator's point of view, that intimacy of where we don't really think of ourselves in terms of our it was internalized, the narrator's thinking a lot for me, almost like uh kind of that diaristic mode of being very close to the present moment,
Sure.
very close to the inside of the narrator.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's interesting that you talk about the isolation. The isolation feels very real and doesn't come up, in every moment, but then she has like I would say like an untetheredness about her that I saw in the fact that she works in the service industry as a cleaner, which is often one of the most unsupported jobs of anybody. She lives in this house that was bought by her partner and another woman, and so she doesn't have a say in that. She, says very early on that if Percy, her partner, gets this job, she's just gonna go, and it doesn't, there's no option for her. It's not like a great academic hire where it's like, if you get hired, then they're gonna hire me. It's just like I'm just gonna go with him, and so I think that also served for me to highlight her connection to these animals, because it really feels like she doesn't have a lot of other connections, even with her friends or her neighbors. And was that untetheredness conscious to help her kind of frame herself in this grief or in kind of her situation?
Yeah, definitely. I think like a lot of interesting things came up as you were talking about that, with the the kind of maintenance, the service industry, this idea of caretaking and maintenance, which is very important to the book in how we exercise kind of the power we have to do that, to care for other things, to tend to things, and
And to
I
clean. There's a lot of talk about cleaning.
and to clean
Yeah.
and to clean. So and then just interrogating, like, is this what value do we place on them? How is that value recognized by the outside world, or is it? And I think for the large part that the value of those industries and actions are diminished by our society. So that, I mean, it does, by keeping the world a little bit at bay, I think it gives the impression of that. But at the same time, in no way do I want to suggest there should not be a value placed on those actions. And so I kind of wanted to turn the tables a little bit towards that, because certainly in reading it, you think you might have an assumption about the value of Percy's job and the narrator moving along with that. And it's kind of uncomfortable to have to face our own assumptions about where we place value or where society places value, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that happens all the time. I mean, even just like there are little moments of that, like when she says, Percy hates gin and I'm trying to hate the same things he does. Like where she's even trying to maybe come up with the same, maybe a sense of connection, but also this like, well, okay, I'm going to try to, kind of align myself. If society values what he does, maybe I should think like that, and then they'll value what I do or how I am.
Yeah. And also in that instance, it's kind of complicated by it being something that she's saying to a friend. So it has that layer of, support, trying to get the friend support or make the friend laugh or doing this thing. So almost is a comment that really cannot be trusted.
Totally.
I think has that little level of unreliable context.
And also because she says, I want to hate the same things he does, right? Because it's not like I'm trying, he's a good person, I want to like the stuff that he likes, and, you know, my wife is very mindful and she meditates and I want to do those things. No, she's like, no, I want to hate the same things. Yeah, it's definitely, I laughed very hard, but the friend does not. The friend is, you know, not that interested in that joke. Another thing that I thought about with the narrator, so, you know, Brood is a great title, and I do want to ask, like, how did you come up with the title? Did you know it? Was it just like from the off? Or was there a working title, or did you just kind of sit and think about it?
Yes, there was a working title. Brood was not the working title.
Okay.
The working title for the book was The Chicken Diaries.
Okay. Okay.
I'm waiting for your reaction. I'm
that
like,
feels like a little more nonfiction. That feels like your story of owning the chickens, maybe.
So for me, The Chicken Diaries felt more comical. It felt like, not that I never wanted to go to that place of, are we, I mean, maybe people did ask themselves, like, by the end of this book, are we going to be in a chicken's head? Which is not something I ever dreamed of doing.
I mean, just like, what, 8 blank pages in the middle?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like there's a lot going on.
Ellipses.
Yeah, ellipses, right.
But I think by putting the focus on the chickens, this is a couple different functions that serve for me. One, it was a way of deferring. When people would ask me what I'm working on, I could actually tell them the title and it meant nothing. It meant nothing in a way, or they would laugh because, chickens are kind of a humorous subject to most people. Mm-hmm. And as they are in the book also, but it also helped me with that perspective. It gave me like the tone advantage. So I could, if I treated it diaristically, I knew I was right here in the present, sometimes looking back. But when I started a new chapter, it was always very close. We were not like covering a bunch of time with these chapters. So it gave me a form.
Yeah.
And then it also allowed me to kind of discover behind which I could work.
Yeah. And I mean, and the short chapters, I mean, thank you. It's just so readable. It's like the perfect readable book, because it's like I can do 3 pages and, you know, totally learn something, totally go somewhere with this narrator, totally advance the plot. But if I have to, you know, then go into this, you know, Zoom meeting, or I have to, you know, whatever, it's fine. Get interrupted. It's fine, because, you know, you can find your place. It really did. I feel like the form really moved the plot along in a way that, you know, it wasn't one of those books that you're like, I'm reading 10 pages a night and I just can't get into it. Like, this was just like, I mean, it ended up being 2 sittings for me, but probably because of that.
The short chapters were advice, and I don't even know that it was advice given to me for me. It was some advice that a writing teacher of mine had given someone else, but he like shared this conversation with us in class. I think Nolan and Natalie, who you mentioned were in this group, are like, we know this advice, which is short chapters.
We're waiting on Nolan, and Natalie has submitted her question, so Nolan needs to submit his question.
Yeah.
And all of, you know, so many other people. I'm looking at you, Jamie, and any number of other people who have, you know, things that we want to have Jackie talk about. So waiting on all of those questions, everyone. Also, as long as I've broken the fourth wall, events like this are made possible. Events like Jackie Polzin's Brood at the Wisconsin Book Festival are made possible because Jackie worked really hard on this book, and you need to buy it. You all need one, unless you're one of the 5 lucky people who found one in a little free library where Jackie placed them last night on publication date. Please click the link at the bottom, or and that'll send you to our book selling partners at A Room One's Own, which was, you know, Jackie's bookstore when I met Jackie, or go to majorsandquinn.com and buy it from Jackie's current local bookstore, or any local bookstore that you have. We really love supporting the publishing industry because it means we get great books like this, but we also love independent bookstores because it's going to be somewhere for us to go when we can all go somewhere again. Amazon bookstores just aren't the same. So, all right, I'm going to go back to my questions now. That's my little soapbox.
And I didn't finish answering about Brood. So then, so it was the Chicken Diaries up until I first met with my thesis advisor, Emily Ruskovich, who was such wonderful help to me. I mean, in our first meeting, I kind of felt like, like I saw that shift into heart that the book needed or something. And she said, well, of course the title has to change, which I understood immediately. I mean, I kind of like, you know how you kind of sheepishly leave something there and then notice like, okay, I feel weird about that. And so I went home and my partner and I talked about like, we need a new title. I needed a new title, but like he collaborates with me a lot.
Yeah, this is what we're doing tonight. Yeah.
And then he came up with it. He came up with Brood, and we're like, yes, and yes, it works.
Yeah.
And then I think I said something like, wait, is it Brood or the Brood? And we're like, Brood.
Yeah. There are all the meanings, right? And there's the family of young animals, there's to think deeply about something. But as I was putting these questions together, I thought about a brood mare as a kind of like a kept woman, and about how that kind of also plays into the narrator's role. Like, we don't know if something went wrong. If Percy was like, I'm done and I'm moving, like, maybe she'd go to her mom's, I guess. Maybe she'd go to Helen's, but like, she's kind of a kept woman, and she's kind of just, you know, there at the mercy of the people around her in some ways. And I feel like that comes through the, like, almost the liminal state that she's in comes through as this third brood that I hadn't thought about when I read it, but then I was like, oh my gosh, she did all three all at once.
I should have known, Connor, that you'd come up with a third meaning.
I didn't come up with it. It's in the dictionary. I didn't make it up. Yeah, well, you know, we were in a book club together. You know how I'm gonna think about this book. But
I would say we were in a failed book club together.
It only failed when you moved. We did it for maybe, let's say, 3 months after you left, and it wasn't the same. So I don't know. You can move back and we can do it again, or we can do a Zoom one.
I feel like I'm realizing that I didn't finish some of the books we talked about.
That's fine. Yeah, I didn't know at the time. And that's also good commentary on some of the books we read. I mean, we didn't just read tons of winners all the time.
Yeah, but there were some winners. Yeah, there were definitely.
There were some. Lee, who asked the question about the baking, just said best title ever. So just, you can, you know, send that on to your editor. I think that's also a good move to come up with a working title that you know is not going to be the title.
Did you know Lee is my editor?
Oh, no, really? Oh, well then,
yes. She knows.
Then, great job, Lee. You did a great job. Lee didn't put their last name in the Crowdcast. Okay, so my next question is about how the narrator, she kind of, she has these relationships with children throughout the book, and you've already, I tried to make sure I didn't have any spoilers, but you already said she has a miscarriage early in the book. And then there are these two relationships with children that come up for her. One is her friend's child, Johnson, and one's the neighbor's child, Catherine. And she is, like, profoundly uncomfortable around these children and always feels like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to do the wrong thing. Unless I say ice cream, it's going to go sideways. And then at the same time, we see her being very assured when she's with the chickens, or when she's thinking about the chickens. Disaster could strike at any moment, but that doesn't bother her. Whereas her interactions with the children, disaster is not on the horizon, but she feels very uncomfortable. And I wonder if it's something like, or you feel about her, like her phrase, the simple truths govern the care of chickens, and that might not apply to children. Or is it part of grief, not knowing now if she can have these maternal feelings, or is it, you know, where did that come from for her?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've put that very succinctly. I mean, just about or you read it very, like, in an extreme fashion, but that is certainly her comfort lies with what she's been exposed to. Or when I think exposure is so much of it, of habit, the daily ritual, and how that yields some kind of understanding. And even something that seems similar or almost like it could be a transferred way of caring doesn't always transfer. It feels foreign, strange. But also it says something about her sort of doubt, her doubt of her ability to become a mother, I think is exposed in some of those moments, about distance between her and the children, but she tries.
She does try. Yeah, she tries very hard. Often, as a parent, I'm like, stop trying so hard.
Yeah, stop trying so hard.
Like, the kid's gonna look at the chickens. It's fine. Yeah. I think that the simplicity of the chickens really comes through. And actually, as I was reading this book, we had friends who were out of town, and I was watching their chickens for like 2 weeks. I was going and watching these chickens, and then I read this book, and then I'm doing that, and this line that it comes up very early is, theirs is a world of only snowflakes or only not. And it's so much of chicken life is simple needs simply met, whether that's a heating pan to keep the water from freezing in whatever temperature it would freeze in, or I just don't eat if it's too dark to see my food. Like, it is very, very simple. And I thought that was a really powerful way to frame your character dealing with grief, because so often when we go through something hard, everything seems hard. And having something that, like, these chickens, they don't cry, they don't bark at you, they don't need to be let out. Like, you can have a timer for the door, and you can not go out there for a couple days if you don't want to. And I just thought that was such a beautiful way to kind of help her through this, and was wondering if that resonated with you as a chicken owner, and whether, is that advice we should be giving people? Like, if you're going through something hard, get a chicken. It'll help you get through.
I think there's I think there is like a great simplicity to caring for something where its needs are clearly simple. And also, it's something that I think in grief, if you think of how the world becomes so small, or it's almost like it's a lesson in survival in itself, is like getting through the next day, getting through the next moment. And I think it does mirror that to some degree. And then with the chickens, their simplicity is very comforting to the narrator in different ways. I mean, part of it is that, what if I could experience the world as this present moment over and over again? What great relief would be found in that way of living. So it's almost like they're providing some model for how you might live, how she might move forward through grief, which, or how we all might live.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like chickens.
It also, the other parallel that I saw there is that if you open up this book to any given page, you stand a very good chance of reading something that is beautifully written but mundane, just so mundane. How we're gonna clean the chicken coop today, or what the feed pellets are made of, or how chicken skin becomes dust and then covers everything. And then you stand a maybe not equally good chance, but pretty good chance of reading something that is like urgent. Like, I need to feed them, I need to clean this, I need to go check on something, or did I close the door last night? Like, all these moments of urgency. And as a parent, and knowing that you're a parent of younger children than my children, it really reminded me a lot of being a new parent, where you're like obsessed with this precious little thing that actually doesn't maybe need as much as you want to give it, but also like it's so very boring. Like, it's so repetitive, and they don't give you anything back. They're just like a lump, and you have to take care of it. And I just wondered, like, was that purposeful on your part? Did that come out for you? Is that just something that then I noticed and I told these people about?
Well, I am very flattered that you could like imagine something like mundane and yet urgent in close proximity often. I think, yes, it's a reflection of how I view caring as sort of like the most essential thing to survival is getting the care we need. And most often that care is not requires the work of someone else. And you can feel the narrator kind of, yes, it was intentional to feel the narrator kind of willing herself into paying attention. Like it's not always easy to note, and yet she gets pretty good at like noticing the things.
Totally.
And becomes and in a way that she becomes interested in them, which is the journey. I think the journey into parenting is like, oh, and this is what we're interested. We're actually interested in this now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and watching their personality develop. I mean, to go back to the beginning, like, you know, how much of it is me reading this onto you as a personality, and how much of it is you giving me that as a personality. And with new parenthood, it's always like that. You're like, today, she's doing all of this, and then your partner goes, no, that's not why. She's, you know, she has gas, and you're like, oh, she's not thinking. Oh, okay, never mind.
Not thinking yet.
Not thinking yet. No, certainly not. I hope that the audience is thinking, though. I have a couple more questions, but we're getting to the point, getting close to where I'm going to go to audience questions. So to all of you at home, now that we've raised all of these things you want to know more about, please use the Ask a Question tab and write down some questions. The other thing, Jackie, that I wanted to talk about is the profound sense of this book being situated in the upper Midwest. I can see your hometown. I can see, you know, the neighborhood that I went to visit when my best friend lived, you know, in Minneapolis. I've been to these backyards. I've had these neighbors who are just going to show up even though they moved away. And so, well, I'll start with the first question is like, was that really important to you to have it be in the Midwest? Or was it just, you know, like, write what you know? Or was it like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to write a book about the Midwest?
I mean, it felt very important to me. I feel like I grew up with this ethos for one thing, so I understand the people, or I understand the layers of maybe like what's presented versus what's going on beneath that, beneath the surface. I think that's not exclusive, obviously, to the Midwest, that there's a certain amount of like repressed feeling or emotion, but I sort of feel like I understand how that functions in the world here, or even like this very incredible pride in doing things for oneself, possibly not asking for help. And I think some of that informs the culture of the book that kind of might yield this story. And also, I mean, I love the Midwest. I do think there's a fair number of stories set here, but I wanted to somehow pay tribute to like this life of growing up here. I feel very proud of it, I guess. I feel Midwest.
So while you did that, and you did a great job, and thank you, and you know, as the director of the Wisconsin Book Festival, thank you for giving us a book about the Midwest, because so often, you know, they're not, and they're great books, but they're not. How did you also accomplish this sense of everywhereness? Like, you situate this person in, you know, very specifically in a place, but I feel like you could also pluck this story out and put it in Kansas or Georgia or Arizona, and, you know, aside from it being really cold at night, though maybe this winter is fine, you know, it works. The same grief, the same working through, the same kind of relationships with friends and partners. It feels like it can be applied no matter where. You know, you don't have to be familiar with South Minneapolis to know what this narrator is going through.
I mean, I think this reminds me of something, I think it was Brady Udall who said, like, death and family. If you want to write a story, just have a lot of death and a lot of family. And so I think those things get you far. I mean, grief being this universal experience that we're just always exposed to and always threatened with. And then, you know, the way family is, you know, there in our lives. And yeah, so I think some of the universals are just big themes in the book, and those can maybe resonate with people all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like I've handed, I don't know, maybe 5 copies of this book to people, all for various reasons, and to the same, you know, all of them coming back and being like, how did you know this is the book I needed right now? And I was like, just because it's the book we all need right now. So
thank you so much for saying that. And as you're talking about like the universality, I feel like if you think about mundane existence, I mean, it's, yes, at this moment it feels like we're living in a very repetitive span of time. And so some of those details, we become more aware of them, whether we wanted to or not.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But I also think that's what comprises, like the daily is comprised of that. Everyone's day, even when it takes dramatic turns, you still need to get through them via these mundane actions.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe what it is. It's maybe something about the the reliance on those details.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has that. It definitely has that, like, I mean, these people are not going through a pandemic, but it's like, whatever. Seeing these chickens every day is the same as the fact that I work in that corner of the couch every day, and it's, like, how can I make it a little bit better? Oh, I can just have the phone cord live over there now instead of in the kitchen and have to get up and get it every day. But it is the simple, like, how do I get through this difficult thing? Okay, well, it's just about small steps. I don't necessarily think that I have this Midwestern sense of capableness that you were talking about, though I did buy a really old home and I'm becoming much more capable by doing that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I just have to. Like, there's this, sometimes there's mold in your attic and you have to deal with it. But I think that is so clearly who the narrator's mother is in this book, is this, like, prototypical, intensely capable. She's going to know the answer to whatever. She'd definitely know about vinegar in the water to make the eggshells harder. She, like, she's going to know whatever it is. How did you build the relationship between the narrator and her mother for us so that it's never, like, I don't know, it's not contentious, but it's definitely two people coming from very different places and wanting maybe the same thing, or maybe not even really being interested in wanting the same thing?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly I guess maybe you get a stronger sense of the narrator understanding her mother than the other way around. And I think it's happening at a kind of critical point in life where there's this shift of responsibility where it's like, oh yeah, the parent was responsible for the child. And then suddenly, without us really realizing, it shifts towards, we feel now responsible for our parents in a way. And that's kind of where this book is coming right up at that moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think of the mother as an inspiration. My own mother was largely a model for this character. If there's any character in the book that feels like, oh, I actually had a person in mind, it was the sensibility of my mom. And she would kind of label people, oh, that's a can-do person. And that was the highest compliment.
Yeah, that's like the most Midwestern compliment you can give, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's I have a number of friends like that, and they're various ages, and I have one who's 55 who may be watching. It was her chickens that I was watching, and it's like around our house when my daughter has a question that Molly and I don't know, we say, you should just go ask Meg. Like, she'll know. What is it? Like, how does electricity work? Meg will know. Or how do we jam? How do we make jam? Meg will do it for you. Yeah, I feel like it's like something we can all try to grow into, is that hyper capability.
Or find that person.
Yeah, right. No, that's what I've done. I'm just, great. She knows how to sew in the 21st century. It's great. She'll make you a costume. It'll be perfect. I should probably learn to make costumes, but. All right, I'm gonna go and ask some questions that have been asked by our audience members. Okay, are you ready? Like, should we drum roll? I can't drum roll, or my screen will shake. All right, so the first question is from Natalie Disney, and Natalie asks, your language is marked by both precision and dynamism. How do you think of the language when you're writing? And what do you enjoy about the process of creating prose? It's a great question, Natalie.
Yeah, it's a great question. Natalie's a good friend of mine.
Good craft question.
Yeah. So, I mean, revision is so key in this respect. I mean, once in a while you'll be out in the world and some idea, whether it's something you see or something you're working on that's like stuck in the back of your mind, you have kind of an inspiration that just occurs kind of out of nowhere. but most often it's reading through stuff and seeing like I this just realizing it can be better and then just giving it a lot of thought. I mean, some of it is honestly just like trying new things, trying to, I mean, maybe even find some kind of, I don't really want to say exercises, but maybe that's what it is. Um, like trying to understand the limitations of the thinking that yielded the lesser thing, and then maybe that can help you kind of step outside of it. It's like, oh, well, I'm just thinking of colors. Maybe a color doesn't have to be a color.
Yeah, maybe there's a different way of describing that. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I really like that. I really think that that's that also is maybe a great advice for somebody who's dealing with writer's block, where it's like you don't it doesn't have to come to you the first way that you think that it might come to you. You know, we can just frame it a little differently and see if we can work our way around it. That's great.
Yeah.
This person says, Jackie, I know you as the master of the short story. How is the process of transitioning to writing novels?
I find that interesting because I've never published a short story.
Well, okay.
I've got a big old stack.
I was going to say, does that mean you've never written a short story before?
I've got a big stack,
Okay.
and I'm never giving up.
That's great.
So, the process-wise, I mean, I think in a short story, you don't need that much information. You don't need that much backstory. It's this kind of oftentimes one primary incident, and that can fuel so much of a story. It can really be like the meat of a story. Whereas a novel needs more bulk, and this isn't a bulky novel, but like it just more things need to happen. I don't know. I mean, I think you really could think of them as many stories strung together with all the same characters, and then have some idea for what what they need to accomplish. So they're not totally foreign. I mean, I know I think Lori Moore once said, oh, it's just how much time, I realize how much time I want to spend with these characters, and that determines whether I write a book or a story.
I mean, that feels right. And that also feels right from the reader's perspective.
Yeah.
Like, to read a novel, I have to want to spend time with these people. And often, a short story can be great, but you're like, I don't need any more. And the best short stories are the ones where I'm like, Jackie, please write more. Please tell me more about these people. But then you don't get it. And then, like,
I feel inspired by that question to work on some short stories.
Yeah. Well, yeah. People in the chat are saying, why can't I read these short stories? Jackie's short stories are hilarious and transcendent. So there's a market out there. And Lee's watching, so that's also good. Actually, you saying that you keep going, it reminds me of a question that I was asked by my wife to ask, which is, how did you get here from when we were 23 and you were working on short stories or, thinking about things to write about, to us being 40, and here's your debut novel, and that requires like a tremendous sense of perseverance and not giving up. And how did you thread that needle, Jackie?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I feel like this is the question where it is amazing to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
It's such an honor. So many people worked hard for me to be here also. I mean, Lee, my agents, my teachers over the years, my fellow students, a shout out to them all, many of whom are here in the audience. And this isn't a solo gig by any means. But I met you working in a restaurant, Johnny Delmonico's in Madison, and restaurants were my way. I've worked in so many, I think for maybe 16 years I worked in restaurants. So I'm a good server.
Yeah. You are a good server, yeah.
And I mean, I do like food, and that was interesting to me, and the culture of restaurants is interesting to me, but it was a way to get a free day for writing, presumably, and then work at night. And I was willing to do that for 16 years or longer to keep the dream alive. And then, and I would go back to it to keep the dream alive. So I feel like it's just about finding some space, some time to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And in grad school, Mary Pauline Lowry got this book into the hands of agents. My friend from grad school said, at a point where I was in grad school, had just had a baby and was trying to make all this work. And she said, so many books are written in 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
And that's, I knew. So like, that was my base standard. It was like, if I can get an hour a day, which I thought I could, like for the rest of my life, I feel like I can get an hour a day.
That's amazing.
And if I miss a day, you know, I'll make up for it.
There you go. Right. That's, yeah. Then I'm gonna take a whole weekend.
Yeah. So that it's like finding these jobs, and hopefully you'll also enjoy the work you're doing while it's providing that time to do the other thing.
Yeah. I mean, actually, Madison, Wisconsin, we've given the world Jackie Polzin from being a server, and just down the hill from that restaurant, Paula McLean was working as a server at the same time. And so, you know, I think it's just like something in the water here, but there's also probably something about, you know, having your mornings free, drinking good coffee.
Yeah, and I mean, here you're the director of the Wisconsin Book Festival, which is, I mean, it's amazing to think. If anyone would have told me at that moment, like someday Connor will be having this conversation with you for your first published book, it just would have seemed, amazing.
It would have seemed like fiction. I mean, truly, right? Yeah, it would not have, but you know.
Very inspiring.
Here we are. We're getting to live in this multiverse right now, and that's, you know, it's powerful and fun. So there's a follow-up to the question about the writing novels, which is how long did it take you to really hit your stride writing this novel? Like how many years went into just Brood?
So it took 6 years to finish it. Well, maybe a little bit more, counting all the editing in like this moment. Maybe it's at like 6.5 right now. Yeah. But when I started it, it was before grad school. I felt like I was onto something. I could see this. I mean, I was excited about what the particularities of chickens. I feel like so much of it for me was like, there was these almost eerie, pointing towards, you know, this idea of fertility and eggs and the broodiness and all of that was, I knew it was usable and interesting to me. So I felt like I was on a roll. I went to grad school. In the first year, I very privately did all my homework outwardly, and then I would set aside this time where I was just working on what was then the Chicken Diaries.
Yeah, great.
And then I got pregnant, had a baby in the midst of grad school. The side project, you know, fell away for a while, and I returned to it for my thesis, largely so that it was just a commitment to the work. It was not easy to do it as my thesis right now, but I'm going to return to it. And then from then on, I've just kind of kept working on it. So yes, 6 years, but I definitely took I would say a year and a half break in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, that right there is a story of perseverance. Going to grad school, having a child, keeping writing, getting published, like that's more than most people do at all. So congratulations.
Yeah, and a testament to the program that they were supportive of me. I remember being so nervous to tell Mitch Wieland, the very caring and like open director, that I was pregnant, and how he might just be like, oh, there you go, and you're out of here. And he was so supportive, and his instinct anyway was just like complete warmth.
And where was that program for people who don't know?
Boise State.
There you go.
Yeah, Boise, Idaho.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the creative writing program there.
Mary Pauline Lowry is here, and so it's nice that you can connect that dot. All right, I have one more question from the audience. The audience asks, have you experienced any sense of loss now that you don't have this book to work on anymore? I mean, after 6+ years, and the perpetual question that you're going to get is, what are you working on next? Because, you know, it only takes people a couple of hours to read through this book, and we want more.
Lee told me she was going to plant that question.
It wasn't Lee. It was someone else, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jamie.
So yeah, happy. Was it Jamie?
It was Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my sister.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie, for asking a question.
Yeah. Thank you. So I do not have a sense of loss. I mean, I think it was always a worthwhile project for me. The editing becomes kind of an extreme process of like, you're really inundated with the work.
Yeah.
So it becomes like, I mean, not exhausting, but there is a certain amount of like actually kind of seeking. It's a faster pace than I normally work. So that is part of like just getting your bearings afterwards. But because I worked on this through grad school with a couple other, at one point I had to develop a full outline for long work in grad school that was unrelated to this.
Oh,
So that project that is in the works. And I also, when I was afraid to finish Brood for a couple months, this is after having a second child, I started another project. So I kind of have these two. So at one point in time, there was Brood and two other projects.
And then there's a stack of short stories that just, you know, we could all revisit.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe now is the time when I say I'm not great at finishing things.
No, I mean, you know, you have to start them to finish them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. All right. Well, we were getting to the end of our hour, so I saved this question. I was going to start with this question, but I felt like it would put a different tone on the event, and I wanted to not. But you wrote this book pre-pandemic, as we've established, and you have this line in there that I've come back to. I wrote it down in my book of quotes that I keep. I think about it all the time. I've like said it to people, and the line is, "It is the current fashion to experience all aspects of life to the point of breaking." And I just think it's beautiful, and I think it like so describes like, well, basically how I feel like, you know, moving through the world often feels. But how does that line resonate with you now? And where did it come from, and how has it changed? Or maybe it's the same.
I mean, just hearing you call attention to it is, I mean, it's not surprising having heard it, but you know, kind of, you don't, I would say there's probably no lines that I've completely forgotten in the book because it's a short book and I've been through them so many times that they like recall something. But I mean, I can say I like that line. I stand behind it. I feel like, I mean, that's something that gets very close to the core of my beliefs about our current moment. I think that a lot of my thinking is in the book, but if you had to get to the very core of it, I would say that is that truth about our moment or maybe humankind is so problematic to me that I think it is probably something that could almost inform most of my work, is just that preoccupation with, you know, and one thing about the book's kind of quietness is this effort really to dial things down, because I believe so much in dialing things down. And I think that line kind of speaks to that in a way.
Sure. I mean, it sets up you to be able to say, and we need to dial it down.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm so glad to have made it into your book of quotes.
Oh, I'm on that twice. Also the snowflakes. The snowflakes feels like what it's like to live in the upper Midwest. It's a world of snowflake, or only not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, you know, actually not right now. Today it's like there are still snowflakes. Why? It shouldn't be that way. But you're having a thunderstorm that I'm going to get tomorrow, right? Is that how that's going to work?
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to give credit where credit is due. Nolan did ask a question. So thank you, Nolan, as well. Nolan's question for you is, Jackie, what is something you can't do?
I'm going to bring my partner Travis in here, but
we're talking about
does so much for me that he would appreciate that question.
Great.
He
does. We'll let Travis answer, in the chat later. Excellent. Jackie, thank you so very much. Thank you for tonight, and thank you for this book, and for the many more that we have to do. We will bring you to Madison when we have things live, whether that's for the paperback or later. We'll figure that out. It was so good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Connor.
Thank you. To all of you watching at home, I do want to say another time, events like this are made possible not only by our sponsors and by the library's support, but also because you buy Jackie's book. So please, 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 if you can, click the link below the video today, or visit your favorite local bookstore. Buy copies of Brood. Mother's Day is coming up. Father's Day is coming up. St. Patrick's Day is coming up. There are any number of reasons that you should. Spring break. I don't know. I don't even care. You don't need a reason to buy Brood, but you should. So please do it, so that Jackie can keep writing wonderful, wonderful books for us. Thank you to all of you at home. The Wisconsin Book Festival will return many, many times over the next couple of months. We have the graduating MFAs from the University of Wisconsin poetry reading is on Monday. We also have another great Wisconsin book coming up on the 26th, the conversation between the author Andrew Graff of Raft of Stars and Nicholas Butler, who's also another Wisconsin author, and many, many, many more things coming up throughout March, April, and May. So please visit wisconsinbookfestival.org. Thank you all for being here tonight, and I hope that you have a wonderful evening. Jackie, thank you again. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.